Hi everybody, Levi Clay here, and I'm back again for another guitar lesson. And this time we're going to delve a little bit further into my soloing school series, which is where I talk to you about fretboard visualization and application, the kind of things that I do with my students. Now, if you do enjoy this video, please do hit that subscribe button, leave me a comment, and tell a friend. It's all a big help. Let's switch over to this camera and get started. So the concept that we're looking at today is kind of like a scale weaving concept. I've always found that one of the most frustrating aspects of playing guitar and learning scales and arpeggios and all this stuff is that if you practice scales, you will play scales. If you practice arpeggios, you will play arpeggios. It's all well and good to know that over a G7, you can play the G Mixolydian scale. But when you play that, you can practice that for 100 years, and I don't think that you're necessarily going to learn good vocabulary. I don't think that if you played that, you would magically start playing I don't think you're automatically going to play things like that. To me, the connection that I had to make was understanding the importance of the arpeggio, the importance of the notes of the chord, and then understanding that the scale notes that I would play around that were really just ways to connect those notes of the chord up melodically. So this exercise is very simple. The first thing that you need to practice in any given position would be your arpeggio form. So if I look at this third fret area, G7, my arpeggio would look and sound like this. Now you can spend endless hours practicing that. And you do absolutely want that under your fingers. Program that in, play it from the top. Play it from the middle. You really need to know those notes because, of course, those are your chord tones. Just as an aside, when I'm practicing that, I do like to approach the third of the chord from a semitone below. So instead of playing, I would prefer to play because it helps me to hear or understand where that important bluesy third is. That's besides the point. Now, when you've spent enough time practicing that, we can take the diagram that you can see on screen now and add in the additional notes that you would have in order to connect this arpeggio up into a fuller scale. So now we've got black notes, or the red note for the root, I guess, highlighting the arpeggio, but around that we could see ways to connect that arpeggio into a full scale. So now I'm going to play the scale. Now, of course, that's not music, right? I could play that all day long and we don't automatically have music. So here's the challenging exercise. What we're going to do is we are going to mix our arpeggio and our scale. So what we're going to do is play 4 notes of our arpeggio ascending, and then we're going to descend the scale. Now, when you do that, you will naturally find that you play 4 notes of the chord. But when you switch to the scale, it's not like you're suddenly no longer playing notes that are in the chord, because of the scale, which contains 7 notes, 4 of those 7 notes are also in that arpeggio or in that chord. So most of the notes that you play will end up being in the chord. So if I start on this G and I ascend my arpeggio, 1, 3, 5, flat 7, I can then transition to the nearest scale tone, which would be the 6th, and then descend 6, 5, 4, 3. Now when I do that, I've ended on the 3rd. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. The fourth scale tone I played also happened to be a chord tone, the third. I don't want to repeat this note, so I'm then going to move to the next arpeggio tone, which will be the fifth. And when I'm on that fifth, I will then ascend my arpeggio, 5, flat 7, root, third. And then when I'm on that third, I need to move to my scale tone. So I'm on the third, I will move down to the second and descend my scale, 2, root, flat 7, 6. So we now have this. Now that's starting to sound a little bit more like a line, certainly a jazzier line. Now, once I've played that and I've ended 1, 2, 3, 4 on the sixth, I would prefer to move up to the root now. The reason for that is I don't like the sound of starting my line on the 7. It doesn't sound strong enough on my chord on a G sound. Though of course you could do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the root. So I'll play root, third, fifth, flat 7, and then I'll descend my scale. And it's all about counting those fours. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I could do it again. Start on the fifth. In theory, you could just keep going. So if I play that nice and slowly in this position, around this E shape, we have this. And a bit faster. And then a little bit faster still. Again. Get the idea. A few little mistakes in there. Again. 1, 2, 3. It's funny because when you'll eventually get to a stage with this where you no longer really stick strictly to it, you'll start to weave these lines in and out of each other. But I think it's a really musical way of adding some spice to this. I like to do things like that, a triplet like that. To me, that really sounds quite musical. Now, of course, there are lots of ways you can develop this as an idea from here. You could take the same concept and move it to a different chord if I played it around this area of the neck. As long as I can play my arpeggio and my scale. Sorry. Let's try that again and get it right. It's actually a really interesting demonstration there because I don't play scales. I only ever play lines now. The idea of just playing a scale is something I often will make mistakes on. I'm more used to weaving tension and resolution when I'm playing, so I'll concentrate. And then I could do the same thing. carried away. Now, the beauty of that is, yeah, anywhere I can play an arpeggio, I can start doing this idea. If I go. That's the. Definitely when I just sort of play a little bit more, it all fits in a lot better. So that's me doing dominant 7 vocabulary, and evidently I need to brush that one off myself a little bit. But of course, this will apply to absolutely any sound. So I've done it all for dominant 7 vocabulary, but if you were to do the same for, let's say I play E minor 7, I could do the same and I could play E Dorian sound. So I go. Sounds good, right? Now suddenly I've got lines for E minor. The idea being that when you start to improvise with this, you'll hear more of those ideas, mixing your arpeggio and then scale. I could. Carried away and playing minor. You do the same for major 7. That's me playing Lydian. So you could endlessly do this for any chord sound, mix them in, and it's about getting to the grips with the sound of your arpeggio and then the sound of your chord. Just to close this up, something that I did with a student just recently, exactly the same idea, but we do mix the Lydian over a 7. And then we take the same arpeggio, but we'd flesh it out with different notes. So this would be me doing the same thing, but instead of playing Mixolydian around that, I'd be playing Phrygian dominant. So we could go. Get the idea. Yeah, beautiful sounds. So that's all I have for you. Now, it's definitely a challenging concept and something that you can apply to many different sounds, getting to grips with the sound, experimenting and using it as a vehicle to not just learn the neck, but to also learn how you can weave arpeggios and scales together. I would encourage you to go and do some listening to a bunch of bebop players. They love this sound. Ascending an arpeggio and descending a scale is a wonderful sound, something that I hope you can add to your own playing. Lastly, I just want to say a huge special thank you to my supporters over on Patreon. You guys are the people that allow me to keep doing this. this, and yeah, making these into fun things. Obviously, yeah, there's the $50 tier up there. Sorry, those guys are all guys that have monthly private lessons with me, and yeah, this is stuff that won't be new to them, but I'm sure it'll be nice for them to see it again and to remind you guys, get to work. It's really important that you know this stuff, and yeah, as long as you're making fewer mistakes than I am, then you're on the right path. And if that doesn't appeal to you, then you can also head on over to Amazon, have a look for one of my books, search for Levi Clay. I'm sure you'll find something you enjoy. Awesome. Thanks so much for checking the video out, guys. If you would like to check me out on Patreon, you can do so by clicking this button up here. You can subscribe by clicking this button down here, and you will see 2 more of my videos here and here. Any questions about this or any other soloing concepts, please do let me know. Good luck with the scale weaving, and I will see you for another video soon. Goodbye.